Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving into something pretty crucial today.
Yeah.
How do we make sure AI is used responsibly, especially with all this sensitive data everywhere? We've got this white paper from Rubrik, they're a data security company,
Yeah.
and really digs into this idea. And I know you're thinking data security, kind of dry, right?
Sure.
But trust me, this is about way more than just, firewalls and passwords.
Oh, absolutely.
This is about the future of AI
Yeah.
and how we can make sure it's actually, a good thing for humanity.
This paper, it zeroes in on a really important idea, and that's that data security, it's not just about protecting information. It's really the key to responsible AI development, going forward.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit. How are those two things even connected? Data security and building AI responsibly?
Well, think about it this way. AI, especially these large language models, the things that everyone's talking about, they're basically data sponges, right? They learn by just absorbing, analyzing massive amounts of information.
Right.
And increasingly, that information, it's not just coming from the open internet anymore. It's coming from a company's internal data. Stuff like customer information, financial records,
Yeah.
even internal emails in some cases.
Wow. Okay, so we're talking about some pretty sensitive stuff here.
Yeah,
I could definitely see where things could get, a little risky.
exactly. So imagine, let's say you're a company and you want to develop an AI-powered chatbot
Sure.
to handle, customer service inquiries, like super common use case these days.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. Be more efficient.
Exactly. But to train that chatbot, you might have to feed it all of your past customer interactions, which could include personal information, financial information, all kinds of stuff.
Okay, so if that data isn't secure, things could go south really quickly.
Oh, yeah. You could have data leaks, biased algorithms,
Right.
even worse. Bad actors could manipulate the AI by tampering with the data it was trained on.
It's kind of like that saying, garbage in, garbage out, right? If you train an AI on bad data, you're going to get bad results or even, dangerous results.
Exactly. And that's where this whole idea of responsible AI comes in, right? It's about making sure that we're building these incredibly powerful tools, but we're developing them and using them in a way that's ethical, it's safe, and it's beneficial, for everybody.
So it's about more than just, building cool tech. It's about building it responsibly. Exactly.
Which has, ethical implications in and of itself.
Huge.
Yeah.
In Rubrik, they argue that data security is the foundation of all of that.
Okay.
They even have this product, Laminar DSPM,
Okay.
and they say that can help companies secure their data at every stage. From how it's stored, how it's accessed, to even how it's used to train those AI models.
So they're basically saying, get your data security house in order before you even think about letting AI, loose on it.
Exactly. And I think that's such an important message, especially right now where it seems like every company is rushing headfirst into AI adoption.
Yeah.
Without really fully considering, what are the potential risks here. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, this white paper also kind of delves into some pretty specific risks, right?
Yeah.
Like what could actually go wrong if AI development, isn't approached responsibly.
Right. One of the frameworks that they highlight is the OWASP Top 10 for LLMs.
Okay.
OWASP, that stands for the Open Web Application Security Project.
Okay.
And they basically create these lists of the top security risks for different technologies.
Got it.
So in this case, large language models.
So it's like a cheat sheet basically for everything that could go wrong. If
Exactly.
you're not careful. Okay.
Precisely. And one of the big ones they highlight is training data poisoning.
Training data poisoning. So, and what does that mean?
So that's where someone intentionally messes with the data that's used to train the AI model,
Okay.
essentially trying to trick it into making bad decisions.
Okay, so like sneaking some bad ingredients into the AI's diet.
Exactly.
What kind of impact could that have?
It could be huge. So imagine, you've got a self-driving car,
Right.
and someone subtly manipulates the data that was used to train its AI.
Right.
Even small changes could have disastrous consequences.
Yeah, that's a chilling thought. So how do we even prevent that? Is there a way to protect against this kind of data poisoning?
That's where data security comes in, and why Rubrik is really honing in on it.
Okay.
They talk about using their Laminar DSPM to track who has access to what data, monitor for unauthorized changes, essentially create a secure chain of custody
Okay.
for the information that's used to train these models.
So kind of like having a security system for your data.
Exactly. And another risk that the OWASP Top 10 highlights is what they call sensitive information disclosure, which is a big one,
Right.
especially given what we were talking about with companies using their internal data.
Right, because if that AI isn't secure, it
Well,
could accidentally leak confidential information, which would
exactly.
be a PR nightmare for any company.
Absolutely. You know, they use the example of like a financial institution that's training an AI model on customer data to detect fraud, right?
Right.
If that model isn't properly secured, it could accidentally reveal sensitive financial details about those customers.
Yeah, talk about a breach of trust.
Exactly. And that's why the OSP guidelines recommend, rigorous data sanitization,
Okay.
essentially scrubbing the data clean of any sensitive information before it's even used to train the AI.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've talked about the data itself being a risk,
Right.
but the report also mentions that the AI model itself can be vulnerable.
Right. They call it model theft,
Model theft.
which is exactly what it sounds like. Someone steals the entire AI model,
Huh.
potentially to exploit it for their own game.
Wow, so it's not just about protecting the data, it's also about protecting the AI itself. What kind of security measures are we talking about here?
Yeah, you're talking access controls, encryption, continuous monitoring,
Okay.
all the things you'd expect for any valuable asset, right?
Right.
And again, Rubrik sees a big role for their laminar DSPM here.
Okay.
They talk about using it to, track who has access to the model, monitor for any unauthorized attempts to access it or copy it, essentially create like a digital vault
Right.
to protect it.
So laser beams,
Yeah.
high tech.
High-tech security for your AI.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that, Rubrik is obviously promoting their own solution here, but they also highlight some broader industry guidelines that are being developed to address these very issues. Things like, for example, the NIST AI risk management framework.
NIST. Now that sounds familiar. It's not a U.S. government agency.
Exactly,
Yeah.
the National Institute of Standards and Technology.
Okay.
And unlike OWASP, which is very specific to large language models,
Right.
NIST takes a broader look at AI risk management, across the board. They've developed this framework that provides guidance for organizations on how to approach AI risk in a structured and comprehensive way.
So if OWASP is like a spotlight on specific security risks, NIST is like the floodlight illuminating the entire AI risk landscape.
Perfect analogy.
Okay.
And one of the things I like about the NIST framework is it acknowledges that trying to eliminate all risk entirely is probably not realistic.
That's refreshingly honest, I feel like.
Right.
Right.
They advocate for more of a pragmatic approach,
Okay.
urging organizations to really carefully assess their AI systems and prioritize the risks based on the potential impact.
So not all AI risks are created equal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
An AI-powered chatbot that just recommends movies
Sure.
probably doesn't require the same level of security as an AI system that's, diagnosing medical conditions.
Right. You don't need to bring in the SWAT team
Exactly.
to protect a bowl of popcorn.
Exactly. But what's crucial, according to NIST, is that organizations don't just view AI risk as purely a technical issue.
Okay.
They emphasize the importance of integrating responsible AI practices into the very fabric of the organization. The culture, the processes, everything.
So it's not enough to just have, a fancy security system in place. You need to make sure everyone knows how to use it and why it's important.
Exactly. Building a culture of responsibility around AI.
But this is all incredibly insightful stuff. But I have to admit, it's a lot to take in. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of responsible AI here.
Yeah, we have. But that's the thing about this topic. It's so complex and it's constantly evolving.
Right.
But that's what makes it so fascinating, I think.
Yeah.
And don't worry, we're going to unpack it all together.
Yeah, I hope so, because I need some help processing all of this. So we're talking about, weaving responsible AI into the DNA of an organization.
Right.
But how do you actually do that? That feels like a pretty big ask.
It is. But the NIST framework, it provides some actually really useful guidance on that.
Right.
One thing they emphasize is the importance of not just being secure, but being resilient.
Okay, I've heard that term thrown around a lot. What does that actually mean in the context of AI?
It means that your AI systems, they need to be able to withstand and recover from shocks, whether those are technical glitches, malicious attacks, or even just like unexpected changes in the data they're processing.
So it's not enough to just have like a strong defense. You also need a solid game plan for when things, inevitably go wrong.
Exactly. And that's where having like a really deep understanding of your data landscape is so crucial.
Okay.
You need to know, like, where does your sensitive data live?
Right.
Who has access to it?
Yeah.
How's it being used? Basically a complete data map.
And that's where like this whole data security posture management thing comes in.
Exactly. DSPM, that's what it's all about, right?
Right.
Having that clear, comprehensive view of your data environment
Okay.
so that you can spot vulnerabilities, manage risks, and ultimately make sure that your AI systems are built on, a solid foundation.
It seems like having that granular level of visibility
Right.
isn't just about security, though.
Yeah.
It's also about building trust in your AI, right?
Right. Absolutely. And speaking of trust, that's another major theme that NIST stresses, the importance of accountability and transparency.
Okay, so what does that actually look like in practice
Yeah.
when you're talking about AI?
It means being able to explain how your AI systems work,
Okay.
why they make the decisions they do,
Okay.
and having like clear lines of responsibility for their actions. It's about moving away from this like black box approach.
So less magic trick,
Exactly.
more scientific experiment with like documentation.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Because when we can understand how those AI decisions are being made,
Right.
then we can start to, identify and address potential biases or errors.
Right. And we've talked about, the dangers of biased data.
Yeah.
But how do you actually go about like mitigating that? Is it even possible to like completely eliminate bias?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And the NIST framework, it acknowledges that it's a complex challenge, right? There's no easy answer.
Sure.
They recommend kind of a multi-pronged approach
Right.
that includes things like using diverse and representative data sets, right?
Okay.
Carefully evaluating AI systems for any signs of bias.
Okay.
And implementing like mechanisms for feedback and redress.
So it's about like being proactive and vigilant
Yes.
throughout the entire like AI life cycle from, design and development to deployment and monitoring.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's also about recognizing that bias isn't always intentional,
Right.
right? It can creep in through unconscious biases
Right.
in the data itself,
Right.
or even in the algorithms
Okay.
that are used to process that data.
That's why this human oversight thing is so crucial.
Absolutely.
We can't just hand over the reins to AI and
Right.
hope for the best.
Exactly. Now, moving beyond the NIST framework, this Rubrik white paper, they also touch on a bunch of other really important industry guidelines.
Okay.
One that stood out to me was the U.S. Executive Order on Safe, Secure, and Trustworthy AI, which came out last year.
Oh, yeah, I remember hearing about that. Didn't that lay out some pretty, like, ambitious goals for AI development in the U.S.?
It did.
Okay.
It really focuses on protecting Americans' privacy,
Oh, yeah.
advancing equity and civil rights, and really
Correct.
promoting, responsible innovation in the field of AI.
Okay, so it's like the U.S. government drawing a line in the sand and saying, okay, AI has incredible potential. We all know this.
Right.
But we need to make sure that it's actually used for good.
Exactly. And one of the ways they're aiming to do that is by, establishing clear standards for AI safety, security, and trustworthiness.
Got it.
They're particularly concerned about the potential for AI to be used to, exploit personal data, for example.
Which is a very real concern, given how much data we know these systems rely on.
Absolutely. That's why the executive order, it emphasizes the importance of, robust data protection measures.
Okay.
Things like encryption, access controls, de-identification techniques.
So locking down that data, making sure it's used responsibly.
Precisely. Now, another really interesting initiative that the Rubrik paper highlights is the CISA roadmap for AI.
CISA roadmap.
CISA stands for the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency.
Okay.
And they're basically, the ones responsible for protecting the nation's critical infrastructure.
So big picture stuff.
Big picture.
Like power grids.
Power grids, financial systems, elections.
Yeah, if those get hacked, we've got bigger problems.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the things they're particularly focused on is this threat of adversarial machine learning.
Adversarial machine learning. Okay, that sounds kind of intense.
It's a mouthful, right?
Yeah.
It's basically the idea that hackers could try to manipulate or disrupt AI systems for malicious purposes.
So finding vulnerabilities in the AI itself.
Exactly.
And exploiting them.
Precisely. And because AI is being used in more and more critical systems,
Right.
the potential consequences of a successful attack could be really severe.
Yeah, that's a pretty sobering thought.
It is. But the good news is that
Okay.
CISA is, they're actively working to address this.
Yeah, okay.
Their roadmap, it outlines a bunch of steps
Okay.
that organizations can take to protect their systems.
Okay.
Things like implementing stronger security controls, monitoring for suspicious activity,
Oh,
having a plan in place to respond to incidents if they happen.
so being prepared for the worst, but still working towards the best.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears geographically for a moment and
Oh.
talk about what's happening kind of across the pond.
Okay.
The Rubrik paper, it also touches on the EU Artificial Intelligence Act,
Okay.
which is another major piece of legislation aimed at regulating AI.
I've heard of that, but I haven't really had a chance to like dig in.
Sure.
How does it compare to what we're doing here in the US?
It's interesting. They're coming at it from slightly different angles.
Okay.
While the US seems to be prioritizing like innovation and economic competitiveness when it comes to AI.
Okay. So like
Yeah.
let's get this out there, let's build it, kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The EU is putting a much stronger emphasis on the potential risks
Okay.
to fundamental rights and freedoms.
So more about like making sure that AI development aligns with European values
Exactly.
and doesn't infringe on things like privacy and autonomy.
Exactly. And one of the ways they're doing that is by establishing this risk-based approach to AI regulation.
That,
So they've identified certain AI applications that they consider high risk.
meaning they pose, a significant potential threat to fundamental rights or safety.
And what kind of applications fall under that like high risk category?
Think like AI systems that are used in healthcare.
Okay, yeah, high stakes?
High stakes, exactly.
Yeah.
Law enforcement, credit scoring.
Right, where the consequences of a mistake or bias could be like really, really bad.
Exactly.
Okay.
So for these high-risk systems, the EU is proposing things like mandatory risk assessments,
Okay.
strict data quality requirements,
Okay.
human oversight,
Got it.
and even potential bans on certain applications altogether.
Wow. Okay, they're not messing around.
They're taking it very seriously.
Yeah,
Oh.
it seems like they're really trying to like get ahead of the curve on this and establish like a global benchmark for ethical AI development. I think that's definitely their goal.
Yeah.
And while the US and EU approaches, they might seem quite different on the surface.
Yeah.
I think they both highlight this growing global awareness
There.
that AI, it's not just this technological issue, it's a societal one.
It's about making sure that this powerful technology is used in a way that benefits everyone.
Exactly.
It's pretty amazing to see how, different countries, different organizations are grappling with these huge questions, about AI in the future.
It really is. And it's clear that there's no easy answer, right? There's no one size fits all solution here.
Right.
Whatever approach we take to responsible AI needs to be adaptable, it needs to be nuanced, and it needs to kind of constantly be evolving as the technology itself evolves, which is,
It's like we're building the plane as we're flying it,
exactly.
which is exciting and terrifying at the same time.
It is. But I think that's where, this emphasis on data security, this idea that data security is foundational
Right.
to responsible AI.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Okay.
Because regardless of what specific regulations or guidelines,
Yeah.
ultimately, if the data itself isn't secure,
Yeah.
everything else kind of falls apart.
Right. It's like building that plane with faulty material.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter how good the design is.
Right, yeah.
It's not going to fly very well.
It's not going to end well for anybody.
Exactly. And I think that's why I think this Rubrik white paper, while, they're obviously promoting their own product here, they do a good job of highlighting like that critical importance of data security in this broader context of responsible AI.
Absolutely. They're basically saying if you want to do AI and you want to do it right, you got to get serious about data security.
Yeah, it's not just a tech issue.
It's a business imperative.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's about so much more than just, preventing those data breaches we hear about.
Right.
It's about making sure that the data that's being used to train these systems, it's accurate, it's reliable, it's representative of the real world.
It's about having that visibility into how it's being used, who has access to it.
Transparency.
Yeah, and what decisions are being made based on it.
Accountability, yeah.
It's about building trust, both within your organization and with the people who are ultimately going to be impacted by these AI systems.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, on that note, I think it's probably time for us to wrap up this deep dive here.
Okay.
But before we go, I do want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Please.
We've talked a lot about, the potential risks of AI.
Right.
And those are definitely real.
Very real.
And they're worth,
Yeah.
taking seriously.
Absolutely.
But we shouldn't let fear,
Right.
paralyze us or stifle innovation.
Right.
AI has incredible potential
Huge.
to do amazing things in the world,
Yeah.
to solve some of the world's most pressing problems,
Yeah.
to create a better future, hopefully, for everyone.
I hope.
But we need to approach it,
Yeah.
with open eyes,
Open minds.
clear minds, and a deep sense of responsibility
Yeah.
for these tools that we're creating.
Well said.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking,
Absolutely.
and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
Yeah. I hope it gives you something to think about.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and keep asking those tough questions.
See you next time.